principles. I am Steve Gilliland, an American. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sometimes known as the Mormons. I have a wonderful wife and family, 8 children, 20 grandchildren, and I have been involved with the Muslim people for about 8 years or so through my church. Has asked me to build bridges and help people get acquainted with each other amongst the Mormons and the Muslims. I come from a church that is very structured as far as its organization is concerned. And we do a lot of good in the world and in the community. Mormons are known for their humanitarian work. But most of this is generated from the top down. If people individually want to do things, they can. But usually they get permission from the church structure if they're doing it in a religious sphere. I found just the opposite in the Hizmet movement, that there is no authoritarian leadership driving it. There are wonderful, inspired ideas from Mr. Gilliland. But people individually and in groups studied his work and then came up with their own applications of what he's telling them. And that was surprising to me that all over the country, all over Turkey, there are groups popping up who read what he had to say, were inspired by them, pulled together with a network of neighbors and friends and others, pooled their resources and developed the means to build schools and colleges, a newspaper, to a humanitarian program, and other groups that try to bring people together, diverse people together to talk and to share and to understand each other. I thought we've said many times, if there is peace in the world in the future, it's going to be people like members of the Hizmet movement and others who will pull together to understand each other and to talk it through and bring about peace. Mr. Gilliland is an impressive person, not because of his person or his personality or his organization, but because of his ideas. My impression of him is that he's a very humble person. He has a strong point of view about various things, but he seems like a very humble person, one who listens and encourages listening and sharing and building. But it's his ideas that are the power. I see the Hizmet movement as the best expression of Islam that I have seen anywhere. The Prophet Muhammad said that we are created. It's in the Quran. It says that we are created in different societies and cultures and backgrounds as a challenge to come together and understand each other and to bring about peace. And that's the whole thrust that I can see of the Gilliland movement, is to bring people together, to understand each other as a way of bringing about peace. So I believe that, also Islam doesn't have any pope or authoritarian leader to guide it. It's a people worship. It's an individual relationship between man and God, woman and God, and so there is no structure there that anyone can turn to except the book and to God. And Muslims gather together in communities and establish mosques and invite scholars to come in and teach them, but that's of their own spontaneous accord. And no one is telling them to do this. They're doing this out of their hearts. And I see that the same way in the Hizmet movement. I don't see Gilliland running anything. I see him as expressing ideas that are very sound and based upon the teachings of the Quran and of Islam. But not just the Quran or Islam. I think he represents the best in Christianity, the best in Buddhism, the best in Sikhism, on and on and on. The best of all world religions, I think, are represented in the philosophy of Fethullah Gulen. The most striking aspect of the Hizmet movement to me is the spontaneity of the people the followers, that they bring forth their interpretation of the philosophy of Gulen and apply it in their own situation according to their needs and their circumstances. I think that is the richest portion of the richest expression of religion, is where people are not told what to do as much as that they are in tune with God and pray about it and then apply it as God guides them. As far as education is concerned, I see the key thrust of it is understanding, bringing people from different backgrounds, different economic levels, or from a great variety of experiences, coming together, studying together, and helping to understand human beings, understand each other. If we're going to have peace in the world or solve the world's problems, I think first of all we need to understand not just the physical aspects of the problems, which is an important part of education, but also the human aspects of the problems, and to develop people who have the skills of encountering people who are different than themselves and not being threatened by this, because they know that people are people and they've learned to communicate and be at home with them. And to me, this is the solution. And in schools, there's no better place than in schools while they're having their various learning experiences to be interacting and growing in the emotional human dimensions. And I see this happening. In the last 6 years, we've met many teachers from the different schools. We've been in their homes, we've eaten with them, we've heard their philosophy of education, and I'm very impressed that this is a very peaceful, bright, supportive community that wherever they build a school in the world. In the last 6 years since we have encountered the Hizmet movement, we've been to many activities where they have invited people of various faiths together in dinners and other events where they could visit and get acquainted and share their different points of view. I see that the Hizmet movement is very strongly involved in helping people of different faiths to understand each other and talk through their differences. Not that people leave being agreed on everything, but they learn to be agreeable, and they learn that other people of other faiths are good people too, and want the same for their families that we want for our families and our faith. To me, one of the key principles of Islam is generosity and compassion in dealing with people who are poverty-stricken, poor, people who've been through disasters, and that's a key principle of the faith of a Muslim. And I think that the Hizmet movement is a wonderful expression of those principles in Islam, where they reach out as the Prophet Muhammad would have them, reach out around the world to people who are struggling in disasters and in problems, and who don't have help, and they're providing help to them as much as they can anyway, without any strings attached. They're not there to convert, they're not there to gain power over people, they're there to help people and to raise them up. Down through history, different individuals, tyrants or whatever you want to call them, have tried to use fear to strengthen their power. We see Erdogan using a very benign, very supportive group, such as the Hizmet movement, as a means of creating fear in the minds of people, so that he can enhance his own power. And I don't think it's going to work. On a short-term basis, he may have some success in this, but the Turkish people are smart enough to not be fooled by this type of these types of lies. My statement to the people in Turkey is find out what the Hizmet program is all about. Read the philosophy of Fethullah Gulen and realize where they're coming from. Instead of listening to the politicians describe it, go to the source.